Hey, what is up, everybody? Welcome to Show Me the Meaning, Wisecrack's movie podcast.
Show me meaning! Wah, wah,
And yes, that is right. We're going to be talking about Borat this week. I mean, we're going to be concentrating on the second film, but as we were just saying beforehand, we're going to also talk about the first film and the character. If you guys have any experience with Borat from the Ali G show way back in the day, feel free to bring in anecdotes for that, because it's more just about the character. But I want to get this right here. So we're going to be talking about Borat, Cultural Learnings of America for Make Benefit Glorious Nation of Kazakhstan, but really focusing on Borat, subsequent movie film, delivery of prodigious bribe to American regime for make benefit once glorious nation of Kazakhstan by that mad creator, Sacha Baron Cohen, starring, of course, him as Borat, and in the role of his daughter, Maria Bakalova, and directed by Jason Woliner, who I'm not really familiar with, but I guess he does a lot of sketch comedy stuff. He's done a lot of television, and I believe this is kind of like his first big feature. Correct me if I'm wrong, Raymond and Ryan. But that's what I know about him. Does that sound right?
I think you're right.
I'm getting nods of affirmation.
Far,
yeah.
Okay, cool. So that's what we're going to be talking about this week. I mean, first impressions, let's go around and talk about what it was like the first time we saw the original Borat. And then, of course, let's say then what was it like watching this film. Let's start with Raymond.
I went to this in theaters when it came out, the original. Back, I think this was 2006, so I must have been a junior in high school at the time. And like everybody, watched it 100 times after that, quoted it constantly. I was a huge fan of the Ali G show. I got a kick out of this movie. And I really, I enjoyed the second one quite a bit. I was kind of curious going into it because I was wondering if the shtick would hold up, or curious about how he would make it work. And they even kind of incorporate that stuff, like the fact that he can't get away with doing Borat anymore in a lot of places.
That was a good twist.
So it was, it was kind of
it's kind of necessary,
I
think, too. Yeah.
To address that. And one of the things I'm sure we'll dig into a little bit later, but one of the things I just wanted to bring up off the bat was when I first heard that, they made a new Borat movie and here it comes, and that he had cast someone as his daughter, I was kind of worried that it was just going to become like, well, I can't get away with doing Borat anymore, so I just kind of send her out for all the man on the street stuff, and then we'll just have scripted scenes together. But I actually thought that adding her in was a really great foil for his character, we'll talk about it a little bit more, I'm sure, but I was pleasantly surprised with the second one. It's not exactly Shakespeare, but it was really funny, and I had a good time watching it. What did you guys think?
What about you, Ryan?
So yeah, the first time I saw the first one, I laughed my fucking ass off. Like, to me, that's a perfect film. And it just hit the zeitgeist at the perfect time. I actually had also been familiar with the LEG show. My friend Brian had sat me down. We had watched the first season of LEG, and it blew my mind. And it wasn't until like the third or fourth episode, like literally an hour or two into this, that I realized that he was all these people. Like, it was so good and seamless. I had no idea that he was Borat, Ali G, and Bruno. Maybe I'm an idiot, which is possible. But and then that even blew me away even more. I just couldn't even believe that. Like, wow, this guy is just like the perfect actor, and just what he was doing. I love that kind of comedy, getting real reactions, genuine reactions out of real people is one of the best forms of comedy, in my opinion. A guy named Phil Hendry is like my all-time favorite entertainer. Basically, he's a radio host. Everyone should go look him up. But that's basically what he does day in and day out. He gets people to call into his show, get genuine reactions, and Borat's kind of like in that vein, obviously. And so the second one, I was kind of nervous. Is it going to be the same magic? And the answer, I think, is really no, but I did love the movie. I love the movie. I would give it an 8 out of 10, whereas the first one I'd give a 10 out of 10. This was great. Like, there was great scenes, great bits. I do think it's kind of lost a little something, but he did a good job of updating it. And I kind of like you, Raymond, I liked what the daughter had to bring to the table. Like usually that's kind of the weird. It's like the lame cliche thing to in the sequel just be like, the thing we're gonna change is just add a girl. Like The Sandlot or something, or Terminator did that, or all the
Right.
And this totally works. She's a great actress, and her part works, and the reaction she gets out of the babysitter, especially. Oh my God, that scene was so touching to me.
I really
this
love
movie
that
rocks.
scene.
Yeah, much like you, when the first film came out, it was just a cultural phenomenon, right? It was kind of like the Chappelle Show, where whenever you'd go to a fucking party, someone was yelling out lines, right? Just like when the Chappelle Show was going on, you'd hear people doing fucking Rick James, and with Borat, you'd hear them doing Very Nice or My Wife or Walla Walla or whatever. Yeah, so it was like a thing that got embedded into cultural language. And I lived in a few different countries, right? So it wasn't even something that was just American. It was something that was British, that was Irish, that was even in Spain, right, when I was there. So it was kind of this international cultural phenomenon. So in that sense, you couldn't get away from it. And I loved it. Like Ryan said, I laughed my ass off. I thought it was hilarious. I thought the satire was timely. This is in the height of Bush's America at that point, right? And so he's poking fun at a lot of certain cultural, I guess, norms at the time, and certain ideological underpinnings, and he was trying to bring those to light. He's an intelligent dude, so it's not just shticks for the sake of shticks. So I also thought that there was some meat to chew on. So I came into this, to be completely honest, with a lot of trepidation. Not just because of would the shtick last, because I, like Ryan, that's my favorite kind of comedy too. Like even something silly as like Jiminy Glick, where it's Martin Short, like just doing something silly in an interview. Like I love interviews that go wrong. I just like real reactions. I just like
Comic Dog. Yeah,
exactly. Like that's some of my favorite comedy, right? But it's not that I didn't think would work. I've become, maybe I've just become cucked or something like that, man. But I've become like really soft over the last few years, where like, remember when we did Idiocracy, Ryan? And I was like, I can't stand this movie. And the reason I couldn't stand it is because I just thought it was so mean-spirited, written by a bunch of liberal coastal elites that like, oh, here are the dumb Americans, the deplorables, the basket of deplorables. And so I was really worried that, because that's Sacha Baron Cohen's wheelhouse. Yeah. And I was worried that it was going to really lean into that at a particular point in time, and that it was going to be lauded by all of these liberals who love to shit on people in the red states, the flyover states, whatever. And I was really worried that it was going to be really mean-spirited. And I think part of it was, and so part of that still kind of grates at me, but I also really did enjoy the daughter character. And for me, that kind of saved it a little bit, because it kind of had like a Bad Grandpa vibe to me, which was a movie that I really enjoyed.
Sure.
Because remember how sweet the relationship was between Johnny Knoxville and the boy? It was so sweet. I thought actually that film did it better, but like that's why this film was saved for me. So I would say a 7 out of 10 if I were going to do it. But yeah. Right. Raymond, were you going to say something real quick before I do a recap? Go ahead.
Oh, yeah. I'm sure we'll talk a little bit more about it later, but I was going to kind of dovetail off of what you were saying. I think that having her in the movie playing a character, working from a script for certain scenes, actually kind of smooths over some of the parts that are a little bit rougher in the first one. Like you said, there's a lot of... For every one scene that's really biting and incisive and reveals something about the American psyche, there's like 2 or 3 scenes in the original where he's just being an asshole, and
which is great.
Well, yeah, it's funny, and but you can't deny like there are some pretty cheap laughs, especially in the first one.
Sure.
And I think that having, for example, I think like Anchorman is another comedy from this specific period that was really in the zeitgeist, everyone was quoting, and that's another movie with a really performatively misogynistic main character, but because the joke is always on him and everyone else is playing a character working from a script, it's kind of defanged a little bit, whereas like when Sacha Baron Cohen just tells like that group of feminists that or he says like, give me a smile, and he's just saying that stuff that's like, it's
give me a smile, cutie, or whatever he's saying.
We know that he's playing a character, but they don't, and so it's just one of those things that like feels a little icky because he's just. I mean, if you tear away everything else, like he's just being an asshole to a bunch of women who really haven't, they haven't
he's
invited.
He's playing a character, Raymond.
No. I know he's playing a character. No. But what I'm saying is like, to them, he's just a jerk and he's ruined their day. Whereas with his daughter in the second one, you can have those aspects of the character, but not have them. Remember in the first one where he says to the women, like, in my country, they'd go crazy about you. And then he points to another one and goes, you, not so much.
Right.
And it's just like such a mean jab. And she does nothing. She's a pretty gracious person. Like, she doesn't do anything to invite that kind of ire. And like, it's just one of those things that some of those things are a little bit squeaky. And Ryan, I still enjoyed the movie. I still laughed. I'm not saying like, oh, it hasn't aged well or it's not politically correct.
No.
It's still really funny, but there are moments like that where I'm like, sometimes he's just punching down in a way that isn't productive to the movie's project overall.
I completely see what you mean, and I don't like people just being an asshole, and watching it, watching bum fights or whatever.
Right.
Right. But I hope that after they're done filming, he says something to him. That'd be awesome, right?
By all accounts, he stays in character through everything. Like,
Jesus.
Okay, let's get into the
recap here. Let's get into the recap real quick, and then we'll get on this on the other side. I'm only going to recap, by the way, Borat 2. I'm not going to say the full title of that film ever again. Okay, anyway, so after the original film Borat humiliates the country of Kazakhstan, journalist Borat Sagdiyev is thrown in prison for life. However, 14 years later, he's released and given a special mission to travel to the United States to deliver Minister of Culture Johnny the Monkey to President Donald Trump. But because Borat has previously shat in front of Trump Tower, he's not allowed to get close to Trump. So he decides to give Johnny the Monkey to pussy magnet Mike Pence, who's such a ladies' man that he can't even be in the same room with other women without getting his freak on. So Borat gets vaccinated, hops on a cargo ship, and traverses around the globe for 22 days before finally arriving in Galveston, Texas. Once there, he realizes that he has become famous in America and must come up with a disguise so that he can navigate the streets of the good old US&A. When he goes to pick up Johnny the Monkey in the shipping crate that he was sent in, Borat finds out that his daughter Tutar has snuck inside and journeyed to the US&A so she can fulfill her dream of becoming like Princess Melania Trump. However, Johnny the Monkey has been eaten, either by Tutar or perhaps he ate himself. So Borat sends a fax back to Kazakhstan telling of the events, only to be told that if he fails the mission, he'll be executed. So Borat changes plans and decides to offer his 15-year-old daughter to Pence instead. He gets her a makeover, takes her to a debutante ball, and even prepares her to receive plastic surgery so that she can become a prime gift. After crashing the conservative CPAC event and not getting the welcome from Pence that he had hoped, however, he once again has to come up with another plan. However, around this same time, Tutar starts to realize that maybe she doesn't want to be a gift given to a man. She learns that women can drive in the US&A, and that if she touches her vagine, it won't actually eat her and suck her inside. Shout out to the film Teeth and Vagina Dentatis, by the way. And she sees that even she can become a journalist, so she leaves Borat to go out on her own. Now, not being able to give the gift to Pence, Borat's plan is now shifted to target Rudy Giuliani. So Borat has to track Tutar down with the help of a couple good old boy Republicans. They find Tutar and convince her to finish the job and gift herself to Giuliani. She poses as a flirty reporter and places Giuliani in a compromising situation when Borat, at the end, breaks into the room to make sure that nothing happens. After he takes her away and they mend their fences, they decide to go back to Kazakhstan together, disgraced, fearful, prepared for the worst. However, in a stunning twist, they learn that actually Borat was successful in the mission that the Kazakh leaders had actually intended. Before he left, remember that vaccine that I was talking about? Well, he was injected with the novel coronavirus, and his long meandering journey on the cargo ship was really intended to spread the virus around the world as revenge for everyone making fun of Kazakhstan after the first Borat film. The film ends with some changes having taken place in Kazakhstan, namely feminism. Tutar becomes the number 3 reporter in the land, working side by side her dad, where they report on important cultural events like the running of the Americans. And that about sums up Borat 2.
That was a good summary.
All right, so I kind of interrupted what was already a pretty cool chat going on. Do you remember what your line of thought was before we went into the recap?
Yeah, Ryan, I think I think you may have been about to rebuke me.
No, I actually was going to go into a separate thing about the aesthetics of this one compared to the first one, where I don't. I think it was a mistake to have it look so cinema. I don't know. Like the cameras are super good and digital the whole time, right? And they kind of flow in and out of.
It's a little too clean. Sure.
It's too clean for what Borat is. I feel like it would be strengthened by having kind of the grainier HBO video look that it used to have, especially because Borat's old fashioned or whatever, and doesn't technology is foreign to him and whatever. So, because it kind of just threw me off about what was fake and what was not in this movie sometimes, which is not what you want to have happen in like a hidden camera kind of film, right?
Sure. Like, and there are also, it seems like there are far more scripted scenes in this one too, obviously, to set up all the story and stuff.
Which I think Sacha Baron Cohen kind of, it always freaks me out when I see him in a narrative movie. Like I can't, it's hard for me to really wrap my mind around because I'm so used to him being a man on the street kind of real documentary kind of person. And that I hated The Dictator so much, right? His a couple films ago for him.
Not
and
great.
A lot of the scripted scenes kind of felt and looked like that. It's kind of like they're not really set up like that well. They're just kind of two one shots going back and forth to each other. And I don't know. Like I do like the stuff with the daughter, but there was too much of that stuff sometimes. And like I said, it kind of went back and forth in weird ways. But also there was times where I thought it worked really well. So don't necessarily listen to me.
Yeah, no, like what you're saying is that it was just a little bit inconsistent. Whereas the first film, one of the reasons it was so successful is that it just leaned in hard to the documentary style, which is why it's such an interesting mockumentary, because it's got that kind of cinema verite. There's nothing takes you out of it for a second. Like even the scripted scenes with him and his like sidekick, you're kind of like, okay, clearly that's scripted. And I mean, some of the other ones are probably like manufactured too, but it so seamlessly weaves through all of those that it maintains the illusion, if you will, of that this is like a guy on the street doing his thing in a very sort of natural environment. Whereas this one does have a little bit of a herky-jerky, like, the scenes when they're at the trailer, like there's a proper narrative that is intended to have a character arc, and that it's written in that way, and you can actually see like there's a 3-act structure, right? So there's these like more formal theatrical elements that
it's a little more produced.
Yeah, exactly, and that might create that awkwardness. And the problem is from a viewer's perspective, it takes you out of it for a second, right? And then you start to, and that's the whole point, is you can't be taken out of Borat's shtick to get it. You got to be in it the whole time, right?
That's what I think.
I think kind of what Ryan was saying before about the aesthetic choices as well, not just with regards to the way that the film is structured, but even all of the scenes in the sort of like Kazakh black site where he's being renditioned and shaved and everything. Like all of those are lit like an episode of 24 and stuff. And obviously, they're going for something with that, but it still does. It creates a little bit of an aesthetic disconnect between that and the verite aspects of the film. So it does kind of throw you for a loop.
Let me ask you this: why now? Why do you think he made this film now? Is this like supposed to be?
Baby.
Is that it? Do you think that was
yesterday? Yeah, I do. Which,
like he was trying to influence conversation, or like
just have it. I mean, it's kind of loosely themed around it. He didn't really get much. I mean, the Giuliani scene, for all the hype, was kind of a nothing burger, I would say.
We'll talk about that. We'll put that on the back burner. We got to talk about that on its own.
Yeah, for sure. So, I mean, I probably not to influence, just to be around and have the influence. I mean, have the election itself be a marketing tool for the movie.
I mean, I think the at the beginning of the credits, it even just says like "Go vote." The very first title card in the credits is a bunch of Cyrillic letters or something, and then it just says "Go vote" over that. So I can see them having. Oh no, it's okay. I can see them having sort of devised this as a way. I mean, it's clearly. I mean, the whole thing sort of got thrown off its axis by COVID. But from the start, like they're very clearly taking aim at the Trump administration. They had this whole story set out to deliver her to someone in the Trump cabinet. Obviously, they had to rewrite or reconsider or restructure around the coronavirus pandemic. But from the start, it's pretty pointedly. I would say probably to encourage people to vote, or at least to remind people of how monstrous this administration has been from the early days. Like there's that scene where she's going through like, oh, can you make a gift of me to this guy? And he goes, no, he's in jail. That guy's awaiting trial, blah, blah, blah. Like just one of those things that in some ways it kind of serves as a bullet point of here's a reminder of why these people are bad and why it's important to get rid of them and still be able to wrap it up in this sort of entertaining way.
When did they do the reshoots? Do we know? Like, or was it all filmed during?
I mean, they were shooting. I remember when he did the scene where he's singing the song at the anti-mask rally or the Trump rally. I remember when that hit Twitter that everyone was talking about, oh, we think Sacha Baron Cohen was at this thing because he kind of got booed off this stage and yada, yada, yada. But apparently he was, they were working on this well before the pandemic hit. And then they just kind of had to roll with the punches and redesign the film or have the film pivot towards the quarantine stuff and figure out a way to loop back in. And I am curious if they had, the outline of this whole thing before the pandemic hit and what their plan was for the ending or where it was going to go. And
super
just to see
clever,
how that would
man.
differ. Yeah.
Like if you're an aspiring filmmaker and you want to know how to kind of quickly put something together, like I'm super impressed with how they did the filming, editing, production. They rolled with the punches of some new historical event. Sorry, Ryan, go ahead.
Oh no, I was just gonna throw in, like, you would ask why now. I actually think now is obviously a perfect time because of Trump. I mean, like he it seems like Trump would be Borat's fucking idol, like he believes all these. They have a lot of similar beliefs, and so just the whole Trumpism, Trump culture, whatever. Like it seems like now's the perfect time to inject Borat into that. I guess it does seem a little more on the nose than before. Because he was a little ahead of his time, doing really digging for the hypocrisy underneath people, in the Bush years. And then now it's like war. It's like, there's a cultural war going on. And
that's
so
that was my concern.
In the middle of there.
Do you think it was too on the nose? Like, that was my thing. I felt like nothing that was said. Like, so I watched this film with two non-Americans, a Frenchman and a Belgian. And both of them, like, they had different opinions on it. And it was an interesting conversation because it was kind of like, I don't know, none of the information or none of the jokes to me were something that were completely unexpected. My laughter came from either sheer cringiness or just over the top stuff, like when they're doing the fucking fertility dance, right? And the awkwardness of people laughing, like how far it goes, like that makes you're like, oh my god, I'm so fucking uncomfortable right now. And
Jewish
where it's gonna go.
disguise was another one that was just
that one just made my body, I wanted to like curl up inside, right? And then that woman was just so gracious and sweet. So it's like, I don't know, but were they too on the nose? Like, maybe I spend too much time on the fucking forums, and so all of this stuff, all the conspiracy theory stuff, all the racism, like, I just am so, like, I hear it all the time, so it didn't land on me as shocking, maybe, you know?
I don't think
I am curious. Oh, go ahead.
Sorry, Raymond. Yeah, no, you go ahead. I've already talked.
Oh, no, it's all good. All I was going to say was I wanted to sort of throw another question out there that, do you feel like the first movie seems maybe just quaint by comparison because it wasn't after 4 years of Trump? Like,
well,
when you're watching that first movie, it was all about, kind of unveiling these hypocrisies and things like. Now that all that's out in the open, it does seem a little bit quaint or dated or at least a relic of its time.
Yeah.
I wouldn't call it necessarily because of 4 years of Trump. What we're dealing with is like, this is shock humor, right? This is, and especially in the early 2000s, mid 2000s, like the kind of awkward, cringy kind of, we're going to make people feel uncomfortable. And that's part of like the shove it in your face kind of humor. That was relatively new and kind of fashionable at the time. And now we've had basically 20 years of that. Where I do think that it just as a psychological thing, everyone gets like, okay, I'm about to watch Borat 2. He's going to be saying a lot of fucked up shit and making people squirm. And do I really want to do that? I don't know. I've seen all these other movies. Back in 2000, whatever the fuck, when it came out, you were like, oh my God, this is so crazy. He's really fucking with these people. I do think that this kind of humor is not necessarily as shocking anymore in 2020.
And he can only fuck with them if we understand where they come from and how he's like disrupting their space, right? So like Raymond was talking about with the women in the first scene where he's where he's sitting down at like the luncheon or whatever with them. We know kind of who they are, the stereotype of, maybe like upper middle class suburban wives, kind of people who are politically active, probably conservative leaning. So we automatically know who they are, and his disruption into that is awkward and uncomfortable because maybe at that time we hadn't been bombarded, like Raymond was kind of suggesting, with 4 straight years of having that worldview, that ideology kind of just shown on our face. Whereas now everyone is everyone is mocking the deplorables, mocking the QAnon believers, mocking the Trump supporters, the rural white vote. Like it's just been, and maybe it's just because I'm too online, and maybe it's just because I'm like too like immersed in this world that like I've had so many years of it, and maybe that's also why I'm kind of tired of it and why I get a little bit like, okay, like do we need to continue to just demonize people? Oh, they're dumb, they're uneducated. Like I thought there was something really sweet about like the kind of like the two bros, the Republican bros that are like trying to help him, and there's this
who let him stay with them in the second one.
Yeah, who let him stay with them. There's an empathy there that I had for them. It's not, but I don't know that when the Michael Moore liberal watches it, that they have that same kind. I think for them it's look at these stupid people and look how dumb they are because they don't even understand when they talk about a conspiracy theory. They don't even see how dumb their own conspiracy theory is.
That's also a thing that's like, I think that this movie humanizes it. The second one specifically humanizes its subjects far more than like, I don't know. Have y'all seen that trailer for that fucking Hillbilly Elegy movie with Amy Adams and Glenn Close, and they're just like weeping and screaming at each other in Southern accents, and like their eyes are bugging out of their heads, and it's just like, it's just so reductive and really like there's so much dog shit pop culture that has been churned out by people who have just utter disdain for folks who live anywhere that isn't California or New York. And when you watch something like this where it is someone, I mean, the fact that those two, like, they may be kooks, they may be these weird conspiracy theorists, they may be Trump voters, they may be aiding the greater evil, but they're still so gracious, and they open their home to this complete and total stranger who is also a fucking lunatic. He's playing this character where he's like banging the wall with pots and pans and working out naked in front of them, and they just kind of roll with it. Yeah, like he's clearly not making this easy on them.
They were very nice hosts. I agree with you.
Yeah, and it is one of those things though that where you realize, like, I mean, this is like obviously taking or we're having this conversation a day after this fucking boondoggle of an election, and I do think that there's something revealing about the second movie where, and not to say like this is the first time this has occurred to me, like I'm from the Midwest, I grew up across the street from a cornfield, and I've seen so many goddamn movies where that would make me dumber or less than or less deserving, and it's really, really frustrating, and it is kind of like surprising to me how so many liberals wonder, like, well, why do people resent us, or why do people want to own us so badly? It's like, well, maybe because you've fucking looked down your nose at them for, I don't know, like the past 30 years of television and movies.
Right. Ryan, aren't you from the South?
Yeah, I am, and I was gonna add that people in the South fucking love Borat, dude.
That's what I was gonna ask.
They absolutely, and this is a big problem, a greater problem, part of a bigger conversation that I think people get wrong, is just that they don't think that the people on the right or people, Southerners or whatever, can mock themselves or laugh at themselves or make jokes about themselves. But no, they fucking love it. Like when Borat is showing, somebody being super racist or something, and then high-fiving about Jews or something like that. There's a subset of people that of course are like idiots that are going to be laughing because, oh yeah, I agree with that, that moron. They're not getting it. But then there's all the people that are totally getting the joke. Yeah, that's wrong, and that person is, a cliche of the culture that I live in, the region I live in, and yeah, so. People, that's all I wanted to say.
Yeah, that's what I was wondering. I was wondering, could someone I don't know if Trump has that kind of reflective capacity to mock. Like, could he watch this film and enjoy it? Right? Like would he?
He hates Borat. He's expressed as such on Twitter.
I mean, he's on an episode of Ali G too.
Yeah, he's very adamant about, I got up, I knew it, I sniffed out the...
I got that because I think it's the Ali G segment where he's trying to sell him the ice cream glove or whatever.
Okay, well here, let's go into real quick an ad from one of our sponsors, and then on the other side of this, we can get into the Giuliani scene. Does that sound like a deal?
Perfect.
All right, so we're going to go ahead and we'll take a break, and we're going to give a shout out to our sponsor, Skillshare. If you listen to the podcast, then you know we love to shout out Skillshare. Skillshare is an online community, a learning community for creatives. Millions of people, they come together to take the next step in their creative journey. It offers thousands of inspiring classes for creative and curious people on topics including illustration, design, photography, video, freelancing, more and more. It's intended for creative and curious people. Basically, you all, the kind of people that are a Wisecrack audience, and us all, people who are the Wisecrack employees, lifelong learners, real working creatives, beginners, pros, dabblers, etc. If you go to Skillshare.com/SMTM, that's Skillshare.com/SMTM, you will be able, and you're among the first 1,000 people to use the link, you're going to get a free trial of Skillshare Premium membership. So you can explore your creativity at Skillshare.com/SMTM, and the first 1,000 people, or use the link which is in the show notes below, will get that free trial of Skillshare Premium. I do want to just talk about one of the courses that is really interesting for me. I always wanted to go to film school, but I just got sidetracked with other stuff. And I almost did it after I did a master's degree. I almost was like, you know what, man, screw it. I'm going to go back and I'm going to go to film school, but I never did. So I have basically just learned from being on set. I grew up in front of the camera. And then I learned by being with people, creatives behind the camera and kind of just doing it, and then learned from a bunch of amazing YouTube channels and things like that. But what Skillshare offers is a kind of consolidated course with a bunch of video lessons. And it's really, really beneficial for people who are either trying to be aspiring indie filmmakers, because they have individual courses on indie filmmaking where you can make your films look like the high budget indie films, but obviously with a low budget if that's what you have. There's another course on iPhone filmmaking, which I don't know if any of you saw, like Tangerine, but Tangerine was an amazing film that was shot exclusively on a phone. I've got friends who have shot other films, like avant-garde experimental films on iPhones, and it's hard as heck. So Skillshare has this cool course where you can do that. They have one on aerial photography, so for all of you drone masters or aspiring drone masters, they've got all kinds of stuff, editing, etc., etc. So if you're interested in all of this, go to skillshare.com/SMTM. And you, if you're among the first 1,000 people to use the link, you'll get a free trial of Skillshare Premium membership. Also, again, link in the show notes below. So, yeah, Skillshare. All right, back to the show. So, let's talk about the Giuliani scene. So this was the scene that everyone was freaking out about. I mean, part of it was because Giuliani came out immediately and defended himself, right? I'm sure they had their lawyers on this for months prior. They knew this was going to come out. I'm sure they saw some sort of preview of it, or maybe they didn't, but I bet you they were prepared at least in some way. I can see it from both sides. In support of Giuliani, I think it's clearly voiceover when she says, "Let's go into the bedroom." Because it's her back shown.
That did sound like ADR, yeah.
And it did sound like ADR, right? So we listened to it a couple of times last night, and I think it's clearly ADR. It's done, for people who are listening who don't know what that is, it's basically doing voiceover after the fact, right? Where you're recording audio after the fact. Because you don't see her lips say that, right? So I think clearly that element was meant to make it seem more salacious. They probably, because they're having mic problems, in the room, they probably said something like, "Hey, why don't we go in here?" Because, there's lights and there's crew and stuff like, "Why don't we go in here and we'll fix up your mic." Now, they have the whiskey, so that makes it look a little funky. But, I mean, I don't think it's uncommon for these kinds of situations to be loosening up. Is it professional? Probably not. But I don't think it's, like, sleazy necessarily. Then, they don't mention that she's 15. Right? So I was kind of like, they don't mention she's 15 until the end. So we don't know that. So I thought that, like, he knew clearly ahead of time that she was 15, and then he was being kind of touchy, in which case then it does add that creepy element. But once you take that out of it, then it's not as bad. This is purely playing devil's advocate, right? Sure. I can see this side of it. Then when they're in the room, I can definitely see, you use some clever camera angles to make it look like she's going down on him, or like she's like doing something right. And they
also add in some music, some score that gives it a very creepy vibe, and it's exactly. A little bit manipulative.
100%. Now, on the other side, who tucks their shirt in by leaving their hand in there for that long and raising it up so high? I think he's clearly adjusting his dick. Like, that's what it looks like to me.
You bring a good point up, yes.
Like, when you tuck in your shirt, it doesn't go all the way down, and then like the way that, like, you see the outline of his hand, I'm like, okay, I think his hand is on his dick. Now, is he just adjusting himself? Maybe he had to do that because, like, the shirt messed up and the wire from the body mic. I don't know. But it also does look a little sus as well.
Oh, it's not good, but I mean, it's nothing that is like you said, it's not going to be the smoking gun that is like going to lead him to scuttle off into the shadows in disgrace or whatever. And also that fucking ghoul, like, he has no shame anyway. So, like,
right.
even if he had, tried to go for the full Monty in that movie, he'd still have some fucking spin on it. They all do.
I know. Okay, last thing let's say about the film, and then we'll go into the mailbag. We've got a small mailbag section today, so we can kind of elongate this chat a little bit. But what are your favorite bits? What were your favorite parts? There could be a couple. It doesn't have to be like
dance,
the one.
Obviously.
Okay, so just for our listeners, describe the fertility dance a little bit.
Well, what? They're at like a debutante ball in Alabama or something?
Yeah, in the South.
Which, is a high society kind of coming of age ball kind of thing for people in the South.
Did you ever go to one? Is this a thing
Hell
for
no.
you? No. But is this a?
I mean, I've heard of this stuff,
Yeah.
but no, not really.
It's for like not aristocrats, because we don't really have an aristocracy, but it's definitely for like kind of well-to-do Southerners, right? Like.
Oh yeah, this is like all the plantations around your area getting together, and,
right.
and you guys are gonna throw the big debutante ball, and there's gonna be a queen of it or something like that.
I think
Anyway.
you'd look wonderful dressed for cotillion, Ryan.
No, thank you. I hate dressing up.
I also love that Borat and that, or Sacha Baron Cohen, whatever, is in that scene. He's wearing like a fucking weird. He's got like the badges or the military decorations on his breast. It's such a weird piece of wardrobe, but it's like so no one bats an eye at it. It's so great.
Like, okay, so remember how I said I was watching the film with a Frenchman and a Belgian? Both of them just felt kind of sad that the people who were watching. So this fertility dance happens. You know, it's supposed to be like a father-daughter dance, and then Borat and Tutar, they do like this traditional fertility dance, but she's on her blood moon. She's on her period, right? Yeah. So she's worried about it, and so you're clearly already primed, like, oh fuck, like what's gonna happen? Well, basically, she like completely lifts up her dress and just reveals, you know, that a mess has just been made down her leg, panties, whatever. And so you have this audience of these, you know, debutantes and parents and stuff like that, but yet they're still clapping along. Now, again, this could be editing, but you can see that likely that some of them are like, I am so uncomfortable, but I'm still fucking clapping. And the people that I was watching it with, they actually felt really bad. Like the dude from France, he was kind of like, see, that just seems really mean to me because these people just don't know, you know? And it's like, and what do you do when you're caught in that situation?
I'll have to research a little bit because I kind of took it on faith as I was watching it, but someone just said in the chat, shout out to John Bainbridge a second ago, just wrote that Cohen admitted the ball was staged with local extras.
See, that was going to be my question to y'all at some point. How much of this is truly staged, and who is an actor, really? You know.
But thank you to that user, John Bainbridge, for pointing us in the right direction there. So all of it is bad now. I don't know. Well, that's what I'm saying. I don't know if I'll have to look it up after we record.
We've all worked in film and around film, and we know that, you know, there have to be contracts that are signed, and there are blurred faces. Now, here's another layer to this. Maybe some of those faces are blurred to give the illusion that they didn't give their consent, right? So that could also be.
John Bainbridge, who is now, he's the fourth host of the show at this point. He just said they weren't in on the joke, though, I assume referring to the extras, that they probably just signed off on, okay, we're going to go in and do this scene with this wardrobe, and then just got their actual reactions.
Yeah.
Which does change it, though, from being an actual debutante ball, you know, which... One of my favorite moments from the whole movie, which I thought was real, was when the girl is listening to her dad bid with, or like have a little bro moment with Borat, and like, oh yeah, I bet you can sell it for $500.
$500,
you know? It's just like, that's fucking gross, Dad. Like, that was such a classic, like, genuine moment between them.
What do you think about the babysitter woman who takes Tutar under her wing and? Yeah, and she kind of became a little. She's probably the best. She had her moment. Yeah,
John Bainbridge, do you know anything about the babysitter that we should be aware of?
Everything.
Because she's had her little moment on the interwebs too ever since. Because I think everyone just kind of fell in love with her, right?
Yeah, she's great.
I read some article where it said that she was pissed about the whole thing. Am I right?
Oh, really?
Oh, did you?
At first, you know, she felt misled, obviously, like,
right.
Clearly.
Yeah, I mean, she's still kind of being taken for a ride, but you know, she's one of the few people in these movies, especially the first one where he's met with so much hostility, but also I think he's being a lot more aggressive in the first one. But I mean, she really just like goes out on a limb for this kid she barely knows. She's really good on it. I really enjoyed their scenes together.
Okay, Raymond, did you have a favorite part?
Yeah, I mean the stuff with trying to explain to the Christian Women's Health Center guy, that there was a baby in her, and he was the one that put it in there. Was pretty good. But I also want to shout out my favorite scene from the first one. It still gets me every time, is when he goes into that antique shop and just fucking wrecks house. And
oh my God,
it's one of those things like before, where we talked a little bit about how sometimes he's a little mean-spirited with stuff, but they sort of prime the pump with that scene, that they show all the Confederate merch that they're selling, and the guy goes, well, we're celebrating our heritage and blah blah blah, and he goes, all right, well, fuck you and all your antiques, and he just breaks like $400 worth of shit. And I die every time during that scene. It's probably my favorite scene out of either movie.
Yeah, I mean, the last thing I'll say is, I know it might seem like I was being a little bit critical of this film, but it's only because I'm trying to kind of like unpack some things and really work through, like, I really don't know how I come down on this film, because part of me does feel like it's mean-spirited. That said, I did laugh my fucking ass off. I cringed, I laughed, I got all of the responses that he probably would have wanted out of me, and it sparked like critical thought, you know. As I said at the outset, he's a sharp dude. He's got like a master's from, what is it, LSE or Oxford or one of the Russell Group schools, you know, in the UK, Cambridge, something. And so he's trying to do this, and it worked. It's successful for me. I really liked the moment when Tutar realizes that her vagina isn't going to eat her, and that there aren't teeth in there, and then she goes and she tries to share the joy of the orgasm about the explosion to these women, and then of course these women are talking also about how men are liars. I liked that little moment, that whole kind of section there. She's like, wait, women can drive? Wait, men are liars? And then it's like, oh my God, wait a second. Have you ever had an orgasm? And she's like, come on, let us all touch our vaginas together, you know?
And the moment before that, where she's about to go into the plastic surgery clinic, and she sees another woman getting out of a car, and that's where it clicks to her, like, okay, something's going on here. I really got to investigate this whole women drivers thing.
Yeah. Okay, well, let's go ahead and wrap up the chat about Borat and Borat 2 there, and we'll jump into the mailbag portion. We'll start off with a voicemail. We only have one voicemail this week, so I do want to encourage anyone that's out there listening, if you want to kind of call us in, you can talk about Borat, you can talk about anything in our back catalog, please do so at 1-213-534-8807. That's 1-213-534-8807. But for this week, we're going to kick it over to Jarrell from Virginia, who's going to talk about the Babadook.
Hey, Wisecrack. This is Jarrell from Virginia, a long-time viewer. Just finished watching your podcast on Babadook. Like you guys, first time I watched it, wasn't paying too much attention to it, and I kind of missed what the big deal was. But after watching your podcast, I'm definitely going to watch it again. I generally agree with what you were saying about the repression. She kind of forced it in the basement, you know, her subconscious, and she placates it with the worms that the son picks up, which could be kind of seen as part of his weird quirk, that his weird quirk, picking the worms, she takes that and, you know, instead of letting that fuel her repression and the weirdness and him not being normal, she takes it to the Babadook, which placates him, which keeps things normal. And I do agree with Ryan in a greater sense. I think he had a great take on the whole magic thing. May not be true, but it's believable. So, again, I love the work you do. Jared leaving is a big thing. I'm definitely going to miss him, but you guys definitely are capable of keeping the ship steered right, and I love all you guys' takes on things. Sorry for the long voicemail, but I appreciate everything you guys do, and look forward to seeing you guys every week, hopefully.
Awesome.
Dude,
thank you, Jarrell.
Thank you for that voicemail. That was really nice.
That was a great
Appreciate
voicemail.
it.
Yeah, Ryan, since you got the special shout out, what do you think besides just feeling the love? What do you have to say?
I'm glad he agrees with my magic take and stuff. That's awesome. I mean, I couldn't ask for more from a fan of the show. And then I think you were the big one about talking about the glowing worms, or not the glowing worms, but just the worms, right?
Yeah.
I forget how that whole thing came up about the worms kind of being a metaphor for her oppression, or not oppression, or the trauma she'd gone through.
Yeah. I really like what Jarrell said about the worms being like his quirk, that like someone could look at as being weird or annoying, but that she kind of takes it and spins it positively. I thought that was kind of nice. Yeah, maybe there's something to that, because the film really is about like some kind of reconciliation to the trauma, not reconciliation of the trauma, because the trauma is still there, but kind of working with that beast that lives in the basement. So that was kind of nice, because it kind of like brings the mother and the daughter together. So yeah, that was cool. What about you, Raymond? Any thoughts?
Yeah, I thought it was an interesting voicemail. Hit on some of the ideas that we discussed last week or 2 weeks ago. Yeah, and I also like now that he's making me think about the worms a little bit more. I don't know if we touched on this, but there is something, something insidious about the Babadook kind of getting in her head. And I wonder if Jennifer Kent was conscious, sort of playing with the idea of worms sort of burrowing and
like brain worms,
digging around,
and
just kind of like they're not necessarily parasitic, but just something that is like you can always rely on being in the firmament, in the in the earth and stuff. So I don't know. I am curious, because I think I mentioned on the last episode, in the short film that Babadook is kind of based on, they just leave it a glass of milk, which has its own implications. But I'm curious why they switched to worms for this one. I'm sure they had some greater idea behind it.
John in the chats, can you help us out, please? Let us
John
know.
John Bainbridge literally did just jump in. He goes, brain worms. Right.
Thank you, John. Thank you.
And
okay, the last thing we'll say,
he doesn't know anything about the babysitter from Borat. So
okay. So the last thing we'll do is just a quick anecdote.
Send your invoice to Omnia.
Yeah, that's right. Send it to Ryan, Red State Ryan, as everybody refers to him in the chats. Okay, it is me. Okay, so then the last thing is we have an email. So if you don't want to call and you want to email us instead, you can at movies@wisecrack.co, not com, but co. So that's movies@wisecrack.co. And this is just a nice little anecdote, so I'll just read this and then we'll go ahead and get out of here. He says, "Please don't use my real name. Call me Captain Fatstrong if you don't mind." So, okay, Captain Fatstrong. "I watched this with the missus, and our, at the time, youngest daughter woke up and heard the movie and came in towards the end and was terrified by it. So, of course, I started to set the stage of how I would summon it and then kill it for her. I made a sheet with a magic-looking seal that was kind of burned, bought a basketball and talked to a friend who worked at a party store to get a mask to stretch over it. I wanted to show her, and I killed it, and I have its head to prove it. So, okay, put a basketball under the sheet, cut it off. Yeah. Good dad move. So we found the Baba Shook drag race videos, and then that made her not afraid anymore. Go figure. Sorry for the anecdote. Love this movie and love the podcast. So, I mean, that's fun parenting.
Captain Fatstrong.
Yeah.
That's his name, right?
Captain Fatstrong.
Yeah, you did great. Thank you. Yeah, wonderful.
I'll have to look up. I haven't seen the Baba Shook videos. That sounds like fun.
Yeah, it does, right? Yeah, I haven't seen that one too. So she's not afraid anymore, and he knows how to summon the monster and kill it. And for young parents out there that have children that are scared, that's how you make your children not afraid of the Babadook. So thank you, Captain Fatstrong.
Make it and kill it.
That's right. Let's get out of here. Yeah? Where can we find you guys on the internet, Raymond?
You can find me on Letterboxd and Twitter. I'm at Crematoria. Check me out there. Come say hi.
Sweet. And Ryan, what about you?
Ryan Shorts on YouTube and Twitter and Facebook, and Ryan's Game Show. New shorts every week. I got a bunch of Halloween stuff I came out with last week. And other than that, go check out.
You seem very satisfied.
I know,
you're like leaning back in your chair, and you're like kind of shaking your shoulders. You're very pleased with yourself
content,
right now.
I got videos.
Yes.
And
I'll be honest. Yeah. Are you wearing a hoodie, or is that some sort of pajama jumper thing?
I'm wearing a hoodie with headphones over it. You know.
It looks like it's what's that really soft, like cashmere? Not cashmere. That's too fancy. The soft kind of fluffy material. No,
seersucker,
Cotton.
No, I thought you were wearing like some sort of like a mousy kind of Halloween costume that had like a hoodie thing. You know, like those big like pajama. I thought you were dressed like a. I thought you were dressed like a furry, is what I'm saying.
Hey, since you bring that up, before we close out, did you gentlemen do anything fun for Halloween, or did you dress up?
I just hung out with my wife. Just kidding, I'm not married.
That is right. Red State Ryan is single, everybody. Yeah, I did. I went to I had a surprise Halloween party for a friend of mine. So that was kind of fun. It was a birthday party / Halloween party, and it turned into 2 days of drinking and being dressed up and having fake blood on my face because that stuff does not come off. What about you?
Oh, that's awesome. Oh, yeah. I was actually I was driving cross country. I was in Michigan a few days ago and had to drive like 12 hours a day to get back here before the election. But
that's not a fun Halloween.
It was. Yeah. I mean, it wasn't. It wasn't a very Halloweenish thing to do, but it was a fun time. You know, we had a great time. My wife and I just doing the fucking, just completely bailing on that immediately.
Let's end it. We're done. We're done.
Yeah, well, we could end it.
No, go ahead. Go ahead, Ryan.
All I was gonna say was that I was like, oh man, I'm never home on Halloween. I'm gonna go get a shit ton of candy because I'll be able to hand out candy to all the people. And then I bought all this candy, like $20 of candy, and then I'm like right after I did that, I go, oh shit, like Halloween is illegal. Trick or treating is illegal right now. What am I doing? And so I just went and ate $20 worth of candy that night, and I don't feel good.
That sounds like a victory.
My wife doesn't feel good either.
All right. So if people want to check me out, they can find me on Twitter, Austin_Hayden. That's the last thing I'll say. Ryan, take us out, brother.
Goodbye from Hollywood, California.